Hello, and welcome everybody to episode 9 of the Jankyard, the best and most listened to podcast for Ashes Reborn, a card game by Plaid Hat Games. I think we're up in the millions of listeners now, so this is no news to everybody, but we've got 3 of the best voices and minds, clearly, and problem solvers in the business. We've got Schmendrix.
Oh, I thought the 3 best minds and voices weren't going to be appearing tonight. I thought that was going to be the punchline of that joke, but yep, that's me.
Killer Cactus.
That is also me.
There you go. And myself, the treatment. Yeah, well, I guess we're maybe not the best mind. No, we're the best minds. You know what? There's no one else to challenge us on that. Someone else come up with a podcast that hits 9 episodes.
What are they going to say?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've got to be 2 to 3 episodes from the longest running Ashes podcast of all time. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there were longer ones. The main action I've heard tell of as being long running. But
I've listened to...
There was at least 10 of those.
Oh, there was? Okay.
I think
I've listened
so.
only to one on Spotify, so...
Yeah.
And that was when they did the Reborn. I don't know about the earlier stuff.
Yeah, there was at least 10 because it was 3 guys. It was Colin, Kian, and Christian for a while, and then they then Matt got in there when one of them dropped out, and then Papa Pratt was in there. Christian's dad. They went through a few different teams. It was like when a band loses their drummer and a random person just comes in and replaces them.
All right, well then we're at least the 3 stoogiest
You're right.
Ashes people. So all right, so let's just dive into news and happenings because we are at the beginning of February, end of the first week, and we're still in the midst of the Waves Open. So what have you guys seen, heard? What's getting you excited about the ongoings? Because I think we're very close to the end of the Swiss rounds before Top Cut.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the Waves Open, but I will. I am excited.
You're that bitter about it, huh?
Dude, I was so salty about 4 days ago. I'm over that. I vented on Casey in the car, and now I'm good. But I am excited about some of the decks and people making it through to the Top Cut. I think it's pretty hype that Brankus is in, and who is a brand spanking new player.
Yeah, and he's running JK's Brennen.
He is, and he straight up asked me what to run. I told him if you want to win, run that, and that's what he did. And now he's in the Top Cut. So it's just cool that I don't care what deck you're running. It's cool that as a new player, you can come in and win enough games to make a Top Cut. That's impressive. So Clue has made it with his, spellboardless ally rush absurdity deck. This time out of Jessa, and not Odette, which is really cool. Jessa's a Phoenix-born that I think needs more representation. So I'm excited to see him in. I think Flora's in as well. And, she's running a deck of mine that's modified. So that's just, I'm just happy that somebody's in with something that I made, because I don't seem to be able to
that deck
play well enough right now.
That deck is solid. That she stomped me in our matchup. It was just endless. There's so many, and she used a significant number of frog pings just to stay on top. Because I have Value Town in there. But yeah, it's a really good deck. Even when I was looking at it, I was like, Jesus, there's so much removal and just a ton of units. I didn't know what to do. So it's great for her.
That list is very interesting, as it has 4 Nature Dice lists, a 4-book Aerodel, but only one of the books is a nature book. I think there's a Gilder. I have Gilder and Butterfly Monk, so you pick between the two generally. So you have one nature for Gilder or Butterfly and one for Aerodel, and then there's still 2 nature dice left for stuff like Frog Ping, right? And there's, so it can do quite a bit of frog pinging. And you guys have heard me say, I still think nature is the best color in Ashes because frog ping is so darn good. And like, it's worth almost all the time to just use a frog to kill something.
So I think Flora's deck is really cool. It uses the heavy removal pressure that Aerodel can pump out, plus Aerodel and nature with Gilder and nature pings to basically turn on a really powerful bypass option. And she can go most of the game basically treading water on board, slowly building up an advantage. And once she's got a 1 or 2 unit advantage, it can be pretty devastating because she has options to close the game with explosive growth and removal, powered up, as well as standstill. So our game I was playing again with the Leo that Brian B helped edit, made a bunch of suggestions on, and I actually played it very close and ended up losing because I got greedy and basically had a chance to swing face with a Blood Archer. Decided to try and ping away an exhausted unit with a Blood Archer shot before I did it, and she fate reflected the arrow back into the Blood Archer's face for lethal on the Blood Archer. So that was a boneheaded move. But her deck is really against a worse deck and a worse pilot, you might be able to get away with a mistake like that, but not against that deck and not against Flora. So I think this is making a statement run here. It's exciting to see.
Yeah, I'm excited to see if she runs into Brankus in the top 8. Yeah, I'm interested to see if it can handle Brennen. That was the one matchup I always thought that deck struggled against. So I want to see that match.
I think something that could really do well against Brennen is if someone just brought a Xander deck, with maybe some heal. Version. That might have a shot.
Can I tell you about this Xander deck I've been playing? So someone posted that they had this Xander deck that they really liked, but they got bounced out of a major tournament. So I took it into a Phoenix League game last week, and it performed really well. I mean, it helped that I hit all 3 earthquakes. And the ironic thing is that the deck's author had named it Impossible Spaniard, I think, to tweak Impossible German for the fact that he meditates his earthquakes away. And sure enough, I got all 3 that game. So I got me a W. So I feel like that Xander deck might have real legs.
Yeah, I happened to see that deck, and I've seen a lot of people play it, and everyone I've seen play it has won, which tells you about the guy that made it that can't win, just must be freaking terrible at this game. But yeah, it's a cool deck. It could probably beat Brennen, but we'll never know if it can beat him in a tournament because I can't pilot it there. But that's okay.
Hope Creepers though is, I think, is like the issue right now, in my view, when even like just building decks is, it's like, okay, I'm gonna build a deck to try and beat Brennen, right? Which involves either racing or healing or whatever. But it's sort of like it pushes you to some sort of extreme, right? Either extreme aggro or extreme conservative. And then it's like, okay, well now I have this deck, but how the hell does it beat Hope Creepers? Because that's a very different matchup on a different axis of, sort of like Aerodel, where Hope can just tread water for a long time with duplicating cheap units and barely spending any dice. And then next thing you know, it's like, I just don't have anything left. Like there's no gas left in the tank. And this whole time I haven't been able to get over the top. And the only thing I think that might be maybe a turning point in the meta is that bypass and big units seem to be the trick. So Value Town especially, like I think a lot of people have talked about alert units, Root Armor especially, right? Handles that really well, whether it's Beast Tamer or Root Armored anything. And then being able to bypass, I've been running Frostback Bear, the old guy in a bunch of lists, and it's just getting me past Value Town. and being able to sometimes hit 2 to 4 damage guaranteed is awesome, because it's also a beefy body. So I think that could be an interesting thing if like there's sort of that rotation of like now we're getting into some bigger units, whether it's Archosaurus or other strategies that try and go over the top instead of just trying to race on the field with efficiency. But we'll see. We're going to talk about Hope Creepers anyway, but that was just a quick thought based off of what I've seen lately.
You're right that's the issue right now, is it's two extremes, right? Where Brennen is this, I don't care at all about the battlefield, or I care just a little bit, and I'm gonna race you. And Hope is the exact opposite, where like Hope is just gonna generate as much value as humanly possible out of their units, and not only tread water, but just straight up outvalue you with Duplicate, because it's so good for one basic die. And Void Pulse blows up your big stuff for one basic die, and they can just outvalue. And it is very difficult to find a list that can deal with both of those things. Right? That's the trick.
I mentioned this last episode, but I've been running a little bit more spin down in just a few decks lately as part of my my own challenge. And boy, has it across the board just done wonders. Like I've tried to think in situations like, would I otherwise have spun up a frog dice to try and ping something away? And I'm trying to use illusion that way when I swing out to stop. Like instead of using a frog ping to effectively get bypass, where you ping something off the board and then attack, I've been using it like, okay, well, I am already cleared the board, or I have bypass units. I'm gonna make sure I have a wolf die and spin down the Final Cry or Sympathy Pains as I'm swinging. And in some decks, I also have Dreamlock Mage, and it does serious work. Like it saves you a lot of potential damage when you can prevent Sympathy Pains and Final Cries that just go off at will. And then they have to, like it sort of chips away very slowly, because you might get a couple lucky meds if you can force them like 4 extra, say, meditations a game. Usually you're getting lucky with at least against a burn deck, 1 of the 9 cards or 2 of the 9 cards among either regular meditations. And that does add up.
That's very cool. We've also had new cards previewed as we get ready for the release of the Red Rain cycle this next couple weeks, maybe. If usually what happens is it seems like Plaid Hat is putting the Ashes stuff in the same containers as the stuff coming for Summoner Wars, and Summoner Wars is shipping soon, so usually takes another week or 10 days to go via Team Covenant, but we should be close to that. And there are at least some cards, especially some of the new signature cards that were just previewed in the last article. They were technically spoiled in the rulebook, of the PDF rulebook for Red Rains, if you wanted to look very carefully at it, but at least a couple of those offer some interesting answers to some of the meta decks we've been talking about. Obviously, we've talked about the healing provided by Phoenix Attendant. That was in the first preview. We talked about that a month ago, something like that, when that was first spoiled. But one of the things that, and we'll again talk about Hope Creepers here in a minute, but it struck me that playtime starts to look pretty interesting into something like Hope. Could also be interesting into Brennen. Brennen much less so, because she or they have the self-sack, but let's just stick with Hope. Playtime is Jessa's new signature. It's an alteration. It's main action, ceremonial class. When this unit is declared as an attacker, blocker, or guard, deal 1 damage to your Phoenixborn. When this unit is destroyed, place a Blood Puppet conjuration from the conjuration pile of this spell's owner onto your battlefield, and it gives -1 attack. So it doesn't obviously stop the duplicate shenanigans, but it gives the Jessa player a way of dealing with the creeper without necessarily having to ping it away into double down, which is really the round 1 sauce for Hope. And it also helps contribute to board clog, which has always been one of Hope's most significant concerns. I'm just excited to start to see what happens when that card drops, when there's more Blood Puppet support from the Blood Puppeteer, which was also spoiled, and whether or not that might also slow down some of the Value Town decks, which really want to keep their board slots cycling pretty rapidly.
Puppeteer is super cool. The ability to effectively get 2 blockers, and then if the Puppeteer dies, flipping that puppet over to the other side is super cool. And then when you also combine it, if you're specifically running with Jessa, adding in playtime, I think, is really neat, just to make all the value units dead as chump blockers, because they're going to end up clogging themselves even more. So I'm interested, because I think that answers Sally quite well. And then the other card that I just think dominates Value Town, and specifically like as a huge counter answer to Duplicate in its entirety, is Noah's unique Shadowblade. That card is so insane. I will be back to playing Noah for sure. The fact that it triggers...
Sorry, do you just want to say what that is for folks who...
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, read it out, because I don't have it.
Yeah.
I don't have it up, so if you have it.
So it's a reaction spell on 1 basic. You may play the spell after a player declares attackers. So either you attacking or your opponent attacking. Draw 2 cards. Deal 1 damage to a target unit an opponent controls. Deal 1 damage to another target unit an opponent controls.
Every part of that card is amazing. The fact that it's a basic is great. The fact that the ordering of the card is significant. Like, it's better that you draw the cards no matter what first, and then you choose to ping, so that if your opponent does do something like a Golden Veil, it's not like Void Pulse, where you can completely get shut out of the second and third effects, is great. And then the flexibility of running it as offensively or defensively, and being able to ping away either their current attackers or anything that they've left over. Like, especially if you do end up running something like a 2-in-1, you keep 1 Wolf Book and then you run 2 of those, that opens up the doors for those sneaky tempo attacks, which is really cool. I just love everything about that card. It's super genius design.
Yeah, I agree. I think Noah's going to be a powerhouse once that card hits the table. I mean, Noah's already good. And I think Matt made top 8 in the Waves tournament with Noah, playing a tempo variation of it. And I was playing a Value Town Noah a lot before this tournament and doing really well. Noah's already good, and you give him a weapon like this, and it is a weapon. I mean, this is a phenomenal card, like you said. It's one of the very few cards that will trade evenly with Salamander Monk. It trades with Raptor Herder, and it does other stuff. Like it doesn't just kill those things, but it can if you need it to. And Noah can shut Salamander Monk off with his ability, right? And then he has this thing that can create more value trades. And Noah's going to be really strong. And about playtime in Blood Puppeteer, like, I really wish playtime wasn't competing with Fear, because it's such a good card. And it's so much fun. I can see people running 1 of those and 2 Fear, or vice versa. 1 Fear for the first 5 and a couple playtime or something. I'm excited about Blood Puppeteer in Astria. I think that there's gonna be like serious Blood Puppet clog decks. Like, that's gonna be a thing now. Where you run 3 Blood Puppeteers and, ceremonial dice to recur them, or shepherds to recur them, and you can play puppet books, and then it's Blood Puppeteer is so good with blood chains because you get your own blood puppet. You can side action self-inflict it, main action blood chains, and then something's double exhausted. And you get a destroy trigger, right? That's a really good combo. And then you combine that with Astria, who can already just clog a battlefield spot of the opponents every round with her ability. And I feel like there's a shot for the first time, maybe ever, where she can do something unique that nobody else can do. Like clog decks, I mean, they obviously exist, but they've existed more as like the mill variant where you don't really try and clog the person's battlefield. You just like don't kill stuff, right? Like but you don't actively like throw puppets on their battlefield and exhaust things. You like Monk's decks, for instance, have just been chump block everything until it's exhausted, then play kneel and do that. But I think it's going to be like, I'm going to put 4 blood puppets on your side of the board, like stuff like that, to clog your battlefield. And that really hasn't been a thing yet, because a card like Puppeteer hasn't existed, but it does now. And there's going to be people that try it in Jessa, right, with three playtimes, and like I'm not sure that's not just good. I'm excited to try Astria again. I try Astria all the time with stuff, and this is an avenue I want to explore with her. And I mean, someone's going to run the Jessa like trip, blood puppet books and puppeteers and 3x playtime and ritualist chant of revenge, like just ping down everything between puppets and chants and scream. And like I'm not sure that's bad. That might be good now, with puppeteer and playtime.
No, I think it's going to be really important, especially for I think basically Puppeteer is a big win for the small battlefields. So Mayoni, Jessa, Astria, like all of those need some way of leveling the playing field. And obviously Mayoni's, the way the common deck has been built has always had a lot of removal tools, whether it's Gilder Ping or otherwise. But now having an ally that's also useful, and I think, like Mayoni, at least as far as some of the decks I know, have previously run, say, 3 Frostbites. I think you could also switch it up and do a ceremonial twist on it and run Chant of Revenge with Puppeteer, and then you're clogging your opponent. You're, hopefully gaining the triggers on the Chant of Revenge, and then you're also buffing the snake if and when they choose to clear the puppets out or they take burn damage. So things like that are going to be really interesting. And then playtime, because that's the alteration. I think you can run 2 Fear as the removal, and then just cycle a bunch of stuff with Polarity Mage out of the discard when it falls off. And I think those will just be fun decks to make.
I hear the potential for Blood Puppet clog, and I don't want to touch anything with under 5 battlefield. I think, I mean, yeah, it might give the 4 battlefield Phoenixborn an edge, but I mean, the Phoenixborn I was interested in is actually, because for whatever reason I always go back to her, although I've never really had a ton of success with her, is Lulu. Because I think what you might want to do is have a combination of being able to clog your opponent's battlefield and go over the top with bypass. And so if I want to do that, I think Lulu's a pretty interesting place to do it, where, she can get 3/3 Frostbite bears pretty easily and set them up for flash strikes, and, has 4 books so that she can do that. And Phoenix Barrage, if we are in a world of puppets being served back and forth across the net like sad tennis balls or something, sure, the Phoenix Barrage can do self-removal, so she can knock one of those blood puppets off her own battlefield, or possibly 2, and then deal 2 damage back to the other Phoenixborn if clog's an issue. So that's the place where I go. I don't know. I'm still burned by the very first Phoenixborn I tried to build around when starting Ashes was Astria, which shows how little I had a true concept of what powerful is in this game. I mean, I knew she wasn't any good, but I thought she was kind of cool, and I could figure out how to make her effective. But I don't know. I don't. In a world of blood puppets, I don't want a 4-battlefield Phoenixborn. I don't think Maoni might be the exception.
I think we're gonna see a lot of snappers. I mean, we already see a lot of snappers, but it might get worse, like because they just eat blood puppets, and we'll have to see if that becomes a thing. You know, where everyone just runs 3 snapper books to get rid of these puppets.
Maybe, but you know what? Like I think it makes an interesting twist on a lot of things. So just like random ideas. The difference now between, say, somebody running Guilt Link versus Chant of Sacrifice. If if the meta does switch to something where there's a lot of clog decks, one offers you unilateral self-clear versus the other option, which previously would, you're trying to aim for big targets. Another thing is, and this is something I've even thought against Brennen, or anybody really who runs Huntmaster, is Shadow Strike. I had a lot of fun and success with it last year when I was running it in Shuffle Bus, and I think that's an underused card because a lot of time there is a knight or something sitting back, whether it's a Realm Walk or whatever, waiting for the opportunity. And then, especially if you combine it with like Lightbringer, you almost inevitably set up the situation that you want, of something swinging at you cheap, and then you're able to pop off something in the backfield. So I wonder, like, if these small shifts in terms of like how if someone's gonna use main actions to swing with the blood puppets you've filled on their board, what tricks like call to action might see a lot more play, because that they're gonna pull something out and try and swing at you, just for a main pass, and then it's like, okay, let's do this again. I think those could be really interesting options, as well as strengthen or amplify or whatever, right? Things that work with the puppet. Crescendo probably sees more play as well. So it's I just, so far all the cards are, like, to me, nicely designed in such a way that I see the potential for them to shake things up. Old Salta is obviously the premier ally so far, but everything is pretty cool.
So what about Brennan's new unique Change of Heart? The main action basic alteration can only be attached to an unexhausted Phoenixborn you control. Inexhaustible, you cannot activate your Phoenixborn's ability. And side action exhaust, no dice cost. Choose an ally you control and place it into your hand to deal 1 damage to a target unit an opponent controls. Do you have any interest in that?
I mean, do you know who you're talking to? Obviously. As far as, like, apples to apples comparison, it's not on the same level of Spirit Burn. It's just that's just a matter of fact. Like, you're getting self-sack plus 2 damage. That it doesn't compare. However, there are a lot of cool decks I think that you can make, whether it's, I don't know if they'll be competitive, but definitely like fun casual decks and fun PvE decks, where running like 3 of those and being able to just spin raptor herders and ninjas and enchanted violinists, or anchor knots even. You could make a really cheap, near basic cost deck of all the good allies, Old Salt, that type of thing, and just keep flipping them over and over, especially once you get like 2 or 3 of those, because it's free activation cost once they land. So I think that's going to change some Brennens to a more control, slower deck, and we'll see how that fits in whatever the meta becomes. But it's not the same level as Spirit Burn if you're going to play the classic, like, let's burn and race type of deck.
What about Black Cloud Ninja? This is the first time I'm actually interested in mixing in a strategic way signatures for a Phoenixborn. That I think there could be some interesting Black Cloud Ninja decks where you actually try and exhaust 2 of your opponent's spells if you can in round 1. I don't know if how that comports with Nick's first 5 principles. He seems to be a lot more forgiving of ready spell exhaustion than he is of discard from hand in the first 5. But I'm pretty excited to see how those two work together. And I think the mix is probably 1 Black Cloud Ninja and 2 of the Change of Hearts. But I think it'd be fun to see what you could do with that.
Yeah, but can't you not first 5 them together? Isn't that a thing?
Yeah, you can't first 5 both of those together.
Oh, that's a bummer. I didn't realize that.
No, any uniques. You can.
Got it. So you can build with them together, but not first 5 them together.
Yeah.
Just got to find a way to cheat it in. Reinforce it is.
I mean, so that's a question, right? Is it like a chained thing where you're not allowed to even play it if you draw into it, or you just can't include both of them in your first 5?
I think it's just you can't first 5 them. I don't think it is a chain scenario where, like, I think you could draw into them. So whether you do something, where you're like, you first 5 Black Cloud Ninja and you discard it and you hope to draw into something, or you do something like, fast meditate your board and have a Polarity Mage and bring it back, or I don't know, open memories.
You can Reaping Angel.
Oh God, that's a card.
And put the Black Cloud Ninja on your discard pile, and then recur it.
Yeah.
You want to get big brain crazy? We'll bust out some Reaping Angel tech.
I mean, in that case, wouldn't you just run Shepherd in your first 5?
Yeah, I mean that now you got 3 cards in your first 5 eaten up from this combo, but yeah, you could. Or you could just, ceremonial power it back, and then you get 3 other cards. I don't know. But yeah, that's at least a way to do it.
I think Ninja does have a good spot, though. I've tried putting it in Brennen Fallen decks. No surprise there that I've had more ideas for Fallen, but I think that could be interesting too, with Change of Heart specifically. Just the idea of another, poison choice of, do you kill off the ally and then give me Fallen tokens, or do you let me bring it back with Change of Heart, get the effect again, and then you're still back to square one of making that choice.
I think the only card left, I mean, this was spoiled a while ago, but I just want to say a word about it because it came up recently when someone was talking about other strategies like this. But as Final Stand in Cole, which rewards you if you have no cards in your hand, deal 4 damage to a target unit an opponent controls. And then if there are 12 or more wound tokens on your Phoenixborn, deal 2 damage to a target Phoenixborn for a main action and 1 basic dice. So that has the potential to be a pretty powerful card. And what's interesting to me about Final Stand is to think about Cole decks that actually have some tech to stack the bottom of the deck, because he's got he goes through the deck pretty quickly. If you really are serious about it, you can burn through that deck pretty quickly. So I'm kind of curious to see, Stallion or Ancestor Spirit decks that actually are trying to put Final Stands down at the bottom, or just willing to use them during the game, slash away stuff, slash your second to last card away in Final Stand to deal 4. But to see whether or not you can actually manipulate the bottom of the deck.
Yeah, I haven't really experimented in those areas as much as I know some players have. Like Carl, he had Ancient Spirit in his Rowan deck. I know Clue's done it in Rowan as well, just because naturally, you sort of want to filter for the discoveries. But it could be interesting with some of these uniques where, depending on the balance that you're running, you might, there might be more of a need to filter through what you either have in hand or use it for later. I know in my Koji deck that has Stallion, that's what I would do a lot, where if you get a bad draw and you get, 3, like one game I had 3 explosive growth round 2, but it was like, well, what am I going to do with 3 of them? and being able to filter to the bottom and guarantee them for late game or molten gold. So I don't know. Final Stand is an interesting one though. I don't know how to read it yet because it's just you have to manipulate the situation, and I just don't know how well that's going to translate in PvP specifically, and how often or reliably you're going to be able to pull off for the big damage versus guaranteeing yourself with 100 blades just a board clear, unilateral board clear and a draw.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those cards I feel like I'd want 200 blades and one Final Stand. Like I feel like that sounds good to me, but the problem then is I don't want a first 5 Final Stand probably. And that means I have to draw into my one copy, and now it's less appealing, right? Like I need to draw it at the right time, or like you said, have some kind of way in my deck to stick it on the bottom and then mill through everything to get there so that I can use it then. I don't know. It's not a very, like, when I'm cold and I'm burning through my deck quickly, like, I want to see cards in my hand that are options to use. Like, and I'm not going to always want Final Stand. I would rather have a 2-die spell that kills a big thing whenever I want, I think, most of the time. So, I don't know. That's what gets me. Or rather, a Fester, right? Which I'm going to run 3 of anyway in Cole, probably. But, like, that just kills the big thing whenever I want. And for 1 die. So, I don't know. That's the worst of the 4 cards, I think, that were spoiled. And that's with Playtime competing with Fear and Change of Heart competing with the best ability in Ashes. I still think Final Stand is probably the worst of the 4.
All right. Well, so let's get to Hope Creepers. So we're gonna continue our analysis of the big brain decks, the ones that have repeatedly showed success, or obviously the ones that we've talked about a lot in terms of our theory crafting. And so I'm going to pull up one of very many iterations of Hope Creepers. In this particular case, it is Tuxedo's Double Creeper Crab, as he calls it, from Shuffle Bus Qualifier. I forget when this was. I think it was winter. And it's just a very like clean list. So the ready spells are 3 Frostbites and 3 Indiglow Creepers. Then a Sally, a Seafoam Snapper, Crab. He only has 3 allies, which are Raptor Herders. Then spells, there's a Generosity, 3 Moltens, 3 Wraths, and then 11 reactions. So there are 2 Double Downs, 3 Fate Reflection, 3 Flash Strike, and 3 Void Pulse. And so this is very similar to a lot of the other lists I pulled up, whether it was Carl's or Brian's. The more recent incarnations of Brian and Carl are very much more heavy overloaded spell boards with either Mirror Spirits or False Demons, or I think Brian's even done Frostback Bear. Like, they get a little more unwieldy. But this is just a stripped down, like, I'm going to do creepers. I think they always start double down. I'm not really sure. There's no notes on this. But this is where sort of like the efficiency, I don't want to call it a problem, but like just the overwhelming efficiency round 1 that Hope can bring. So what do you guys think of this list before we get to, potential solutions or counters to it? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I'll call it a problem. I think double down in round 1's a big problem. The most success I've ever had against this deck was actually playing against Killer running a Hope Creepers Gauntlet deck when I basically forgot that double down was something I should be worried about and blithely pinged away Indiglo Creeper, and he was relying on the fact that I'd be so scared of Double Down that I wouldn't actually ping any of the creepers. So I think he almost fell out of his chair on the other side of the Ashteki game when I pinged the creeper away. So Killer, you can tell us about what it was like for you to be on the other side of a player who just does not respect Double Down at all when you don't first five it. But I think the Hope player, like, it's a kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation where if you don't try and contest that creeper at all, you're committing to being a very passive round one, where she'll get a seed they will get a seedling regardless, because they can duplicate the creeper, and then they will use the crab to power up the seedling. So you can try and ignore it, sit back, maybe try and attack other units, but you're unlikely, I think, to generate enough guard pressure to kill the 3 health crab. You can try removal, but if you've got, damage-based removal and they're expecting it, they've got the fate reflection. So I think it creates a really difficult conundrum for an opposing player when you basically can't remove the most significant threat using damage.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess you could. So you didn't have Nature's Wrath. You didn't do a Frog Ping Wrath type of thing.
Well, what is that?
It kills all the creepers, but
I just meant if they double down,
then they just have
kills
more
all the
seeds.
creepers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, this is why Hope needs like 5 battlefields. 6 is ridiculous, because if if they did a double down and at any point they had already duplicated, you can try and clog them with 4 seedlings on the board. Or actually, no, you can't even do that. They'd have them at most 3. So you can try and waste the double down maybe. But it's so irritating, because there's nothing to stop at least getting 2 seeds. Unless all 5 cards are removal, and then you're not running anything.
Yeah, I'm correct in thinking that. Oh wait, never mind. For what I was going to say is complete nonsense. Forget it. But one thing I tried and succeeded in round 1 was playing a first 5 that has Anchor Knot and Meteor. All right, that I tried that plan. I did it in Xander because I could recur Anchor Knot, but I liked, they play a creeper, I play an Anchor Knot and kill the creeper. Right now they're gonna double down, but what happens? They have 2 creepers on the board, and I have an Anchor Knot. Right, so worst case they can duplicate and swing everything. Right, and they get in for 4. I block 1, I take 4. Right, that's where I thought, okay, I'm good with that. And the next turn I'm going to play Meteor and the board's clear. Like, that was my plan. It worked. Like, when it works well against Hope Creepers in the first round. But that's the big problem is, to do that, I've got to play Anchor Knot and Meteor. Right? 2 cards that only get me value the round I play them, and that's it. Right? Then they're gone. And then it gets to round 2, and Hope just makes another creeper. Right? And potentially draws another double down. And now I don't have Anchored on Meteor to do the same thing I just did. Unless I get lucky and draw it, right? And it goes back to that point you made earlier where it's the extremes. Right? Like, Brennen, you can start a weird first 5. Like, I was starting Earthquake and Nature's Wrath against Brennen last week when somebody was like, hey, what beats Brennen? And then I went and played Xander and did that, right? And got a win over Brennen. But, like, you can do that against Brennen because Brennen's start is just super fast, a bunch of allies and spells, and not much, like, spellboard stuff. So you can sacrifice that early game value and you're not too far behind, but Hope is the opposite. They will just completely outvalue you, and the only way you can stop them is by starting crazy stuff like that in the first 5 that will stop them for a round. But round 2, they just are back in, Value Town again, right? With literal Value Town in Salamander and Snapper most of the time, but also Creeper and Duplicate.
You had mentioned Brennen and doing the meteor thing, and I've done that, and it works. I don't know. I mean, I haven't played JK, but I know that other players running that deck or similar variations, that opening, because it usually involves a Hunt Master or variations I've seen like Asterix running Blood Archer. It's good, right? You can sort of get your value early and then blow up the board. And, at most Brennen has usually a Salamander Monk book, which is fine. But with Hope and 3 targets that they can use to duplicate, 2 of which are 2/1s, so it's not nothing, right? You're upgrading the damage significantly. It's so oppressive. Like, there's no way you can keep enough removal. And so I don't know if the trick is just to bait out to try and bait out the engine at some point and then do a clear, or if it's to just stay on top of the 1 or 2 seedlings through removal, whether that's Aerodel or Odette, just to have the extra built-in removals, or I guess String Mage as, being able to just keep the tokens off. I just don't know. It's so hard. And like Shadowfire's deck, he even runs Gilder, I think, on top of this sort of 4-book stack of Creeper, Sally, Snapper, Crab. So there's just always basically guaranteed tokens to go around, but then you also have to face Unit Guard and a ping that can sort of clear a lot of your chump guys away.
Yeah, and I've seen Hopes starting to run Fade Away as well, recognizing that
Brian, I think, started that.
Yeah, recognizing the String Mage is a threat, and knowing that you already have an illusion die to play Double Down, so now I can run Fade Away, and not only is the String Mage removed, but it's gone forever. Like, you can't recur it. But I mean, String Mage is a legitimate threat to creepers, and it's we've seen some String Mages show up in lists. I still think Xander with 3 books, Anchornaut, and Meteor is solid. Like, you're gonna kill all the creeper stuff in round 1. Hopefully they start Double Down and you get a big win on that with Meteor. And then you can play Anchornaut twice to also kill the Salamander Monk before they duplicate it. So, like, I think that's a good open against Hope Creeper, specifically in Xander. I guess other people could do that with a ceremonial die, though, instead of Xander's Reincarnate. So, like, basically anybody can play that open, I guess. And, maybe that's a thought.
There's a few things that you can't, like, you don't have access to the double removal on the scale of Xander, and you don't have the built-in, like, the cheaper recursion of just a class side and not taking damage.
Yeah, and that's not nothing, right? But I'm just saying, like, if you're concerned about Hope Creeper specifically, like, that open exists. Anybody can play 3 books, Anchornaut, and Meteor. So that, I mean, maybe that's a thing that more people need to try. I don't know.
The thing I've been thinking about, so this conversation's been interesting and laying the groundwork. And where my head's going is in 2 different directions. So one is, Matt Bowers has played around with putting Law of Sight in Cole. And when we talk about the 2 ends of the spectrum, Law of Sight certainly feels interesting because it shuts off all of Brennan's burn reactions and it shuts off Double Down. And
Void Pulse.
I think one of the problems and Void Pulse.
And Flash Strike and Fate Reflection.
One of the problems of double down is that it's very resilient to spin down because you don't need powers, you just need classes, and just very tricky to deal with in that way. So Law of Sight's appealing there. I think you really need to want to value the draw, and the obvious place to do that is in Coal. I worry about what your win condition is in that Coal deck, because it's not like you can go to burn if you want to be playing Law of Sights. You have to, I guess, be trying to stall out the battlefield, maybe get some sort of mill victory, but that's not really Coal's natural thing, so maybe you're trying to punch through. I don't know. That's tricky, but it's at least worth thinking about. And then I'm being pulled in another direction, which is, even if you can shut down the first round, you've got the long game value engine of Hope, and that brings me back to other long game value engines, which would be Fallen, and thinking about whether or not there are ways that using that Anchor Knot, maybe instead of 3 book, it's, Jericho, Anchor Knot, Swift Messenger, Meteor, Fallen, Prepare Fallen book, and that's your plan. So you're gonna fight to even in round 1, hopefully, with the Meteors, and then you're gonna start spamming Fallen to try and keep pace with Hope's crazy value engine. But
that's a really good thought. I always forget Fallen's a thing, and that specific plan you just mentioned, I think plays really well into Hope Creeper. That's a good thought.
I mean, in general, and I think Carl has mentioned this before, that Fallen is one of the few, in terms of pure value engines, if you're matching just board presence, that can outmatch or even outvalue Hope Creeper, because the one downfall or crack in the armor is that, at least to date, they don't pack any bypass. Yes, maybe you could throw in a couple standstills instead, but in general, everything that Hope puts out is just going to be slamming at you. And if you can get 3 Fallens, and then just keep either board clearing to ensure that you're both getting the tokens and keeping any of the cheap stuff down, whether that's Meteor or Earthquake or Nature's Wrath, you can do a lot with that. But you said something, Schmendrix, about you can't play burn. I don't think that's true. I bet you could do something similar in Coal where you're playing drip burn, via Chant of Revenge, or you're putting down Fire Archers, you're using Molten Gold. There is enough.
What's the that illusion
for Dream Fracture?
Action. Yeah, Dream Fracture.
Yeah, there's enough non-reactionary burn that I think you could still use it, not necessarily as a plan A, but as a plan B. I mean, even Frostbite, which, at least in the case of this Tuxedo list, runs 3 of. So there are options. And then there's Wing Lioness. Anything with stock, actually. Master Vampire, I think, is a good knight. Sonic, trying to exhaust the seedling.
I do think if Fallen were to become prevalent, Hope does just pivot to Standstill, and that probably deals with it fairly well. But until that, I think Fallen's a good answer. It is probably the only thing that can outvalue creepers, at least in the way that Hope plays them. The other card I've been messing with over the last couple of days in Saria that I think people forget about a lot is Body Inversion. And that's a very good anti-creeper card. And it just doesn't get played enough, and it should, right? And again,
I love Body Inversion.
It's a great card, and again, alongside Anchor Knot, just because Anchor Knot gives you a main action ping, that you can then side action body invert a creeper. I mean, or you can, there's always Gilder, which can do the same thing.
No, body inversion in Saria is just so good because
That's so much fun.
yeah, allows the Raven to eat things it couldn't otherwise eat. And if that's a situation where, yeah, you could let them potentially double down, get to a few seedlings, as soon as the one they put a token on, you body invert. The one they don't put a token on, you eat with the bird.
Right.
Or even the crab, right? You can flip the crab.
Yeah,
and
you
eat
can
it.
body invert the crab and kill it, or just kill it, right? If they, a lot of times they put the crab out like early, before the seedling is a thing, and you can just body invert and kill the crab. So or at least you put the body inversion down, and they can't do that. They have to find some other way because you would want to kill the crab, right? That's where the tokens come from, and it basically denies the thorns in round 1 unless they have some, guilders or timed power dice or some other alternative plan to get a couple of status tokens on a seedling. But Saria in general might be a good thought just because you have Raven and body inversion, two things that are not damage based destruction effects. I mean, if you pray creeper, they can still double down, but like they can't fate reflect it if they start that as a protection. And that's true, Raven's there all game, and so is body inversion, right? They're two things that are on your spell board, and they just sit there the whole game waiting for you to kill creepers. And like, once double down isn't a thing anymore, if it's gone after a round or two, like now you can main action summon a Raven and side action body invert the seedling after you kill the creeper with prey.
I'm interested in revisiting. So one of the challenges with Saria has been, in my experience, she needs games to go long. You want to use her 20 health. You want to use her Heart's Pull. And what I'm interested in is revisiting her when some of these ceremonial cards drop, including both Phoenix Attendant and Old Salt, to increase some of the removal pressure and help make it a little bit easier for games to go along with healing and being in.
There's another good card alongside body inversion.
Yeah.
Old Salt, main action ping, side action body invert.
Yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
No, so the only other thing I'll say is like being in ceremonial and illusion is also then gives you access to resummon on the Raven, which is an interesting first 5 option in some situations. So I think there could be something there that I'd want to see when these new ceremonial cards drop.
So I was thinking outside of the Raven, which, I mean, Saria, however it's been decided, she has a great win rate historically, and very few people play her. I think especially now with so many 2-lifers, she's in a good spot, and I think Old Salt will add to her because being able to get a 2-life for free and then being able, if you can pack in just a lot of sources of ping, is really good. So whether that's Violinist or Anchornaut or Old Salt or just Frog Pings is really good. But another way I think that you can ultimately deal with creepers is gigantic. So because aside from crab, everything is 1 life. And so that opens up Archosaurus and Titan, I guess, would be the 2. Or is it Rhino? I forget
both
now.
of them
but
are.
yeah. So effectively, though, just being able to just go over top, but go over top in a big enough way, and then you have to find other ways of spamming your board with just some cheap guys. Because, like I said, there's nothing that Hope can really do without bypass. So if you do have your own fate reflections and things like that, or if you do is it Love Sight, the reaction one? That one's that's a cool idea. And I do wonder if that is sort of the tech card where you're like, okay, I need something for Brennen and Hope. I'm going to slot a Law of Sight or 2.
Man, if it was 1 die, I'll tell you what, it would be the answer, but it's not. It's 2. It's 2 dice is so hard.
It is. But I mean, I guess it
You really
depends
need the
on
draw.
how many you're
Yeah, agreed.
how many you're going to run into and whether the draw is worth it. But then Noah is
Maybe part of the answer.
Noah's going to be with Shadowblade, the ability to just stop Indigo Creeper and the Sally tricks sort of dead in its tracks is really cool. You're going to shut off a book, especially round one, and then if they try and swing with a duplicate, you kill them off, and then you still have 4 cards that you can do stuff with. And like watching, Matt Bowers with his gates open, it's like, oh, that's really strong. Like you're still pumping out another 6 units. I think that's really cool.
In some ways, I've only been playing Ashes for 2 or 3 years. I think I started towards the end of 2020. But nevertheless, I mean, I think this has been the most stable the meta has been for the longest and the most obvious. I mean, no one brought Maione when Maione was dominant to 2 tournaments in a row. Frostback Bear was obviously the book in the way that, Sally and Snapper, Salsa Napper, so I like to call it, is now. But all of those had, I don't know, maybe it was just that the competitive scene wasn't as serious, or we didn't have someone like JK who was a committed, spike, who was going to run the top list every time. But I don't know. I don't feel like we've ever had a moment as much now when the meta's as dominant with just a couple archetypes run by 2 brothers, I think, in JK and Tuxedo.
Let's not forget that Carl has 179 games with Hope.
Yeah, sure. It gives me hope, no pun intended, that I think some of these new cards coming out it helps to show how finely balanced the Ashes card pool really is, that we've been living with a pretty stable meta for 6 months now, something like that, and I think we can see. I don't think it's worth rejecting out of hand any of the solutions we've been thinking about, and a lot of those being opened up by new cards coming out. I think that's really exciting, and not new OP cards. Like, I don't think any of the cards that we've been talking about are inherently over the curve. They're just interacting with things a little bit differently, which in a game as tightly balanced as Ashes is often enough.
Shadow Strike. Hey, I talked about that earlier. Because almost inevitably there's going to be a token on a seedling, right? So if it's at 3 life and Hope starts playing the Sally Snapper swing at you route to eventually slow play, because they usually, like, creepers want to be slow played. They want to come out at the very end so that they can get you when you've used up all your dice trying to remove things, punch you for a bunch, and then the round resets and they get all their tokens on the next seedling. So if you can remove things when they're not expecting it, and there are, some good 3 damage removal options now: Crescendo, Excavate, Shadow Strike. I'm trying to think what else as single card removal. Anyway, there's some interesting options that I think can sort of sneak your way past their defenses. And being able to spin down dice, even though double down is much more difficult to do so, as far as I've seen, all the Hope lists only run 1 illusion. So if you can keep that pressure on the 1 die, the 1 illusion, you probably can put yourself in a decent spot.
Yeah, I've thought about Magic Siphon for that reason. I mean, it like you said, they only run 1 illusion, so you can, if you have Magic Siphon, just always target that illusion die before you. But you need a main action ping then, right? Like you need Gilder or Anchornaut or Old Salt or something to main action ping the creeper after you side action spin down the die. Transmute Magic's another card that can do it, but it is nice that Magic Siphon just sits on the spell board and let you do it every round if you're trying to dodge double down. Have we talked about Era's End? That's another good creeper counter.
No, talk about
No,
Air's End.
talk about it. I had a different idea off your ping idea, but go ahead.
I mean, that's another card that's, that can get rid of a creeper or thorns and dodge double down, right, at the same time, or just eat the double down and then wait till they make creepers, or make thorns rather, and then play Era's End, which makes the stuff all discard itself. I think that's a counter that's been explored, but not really like hardcore explored. And then there's also the discard based removal stuff. And right now it's really just Fear, I think, is the only real proactive one, which is another point for Jessa getting more play. I think she needs more. I mean, Two Shadows is there, but I think it's very difficult to get a creeper exhausted before it's been like duplicated or value's already gotten somehow out of it.
Yeah, or if you were running actual exhaustion tech like Echo or something with Chaos Gravity or Rosefire Dance or something.
Yeah,
but it's too many steps.
Astria can do it, but Astria's garbage, so it doesn't matter. If you're playing Astria though, you can first 5 of Two Shadows and just beguile Two Shadows and the creeper's gone. But no one's gonna care about that. But I do think Era's End is a good counter.
Era's End, if you do run it, I think you do wait for the thorns to drop. Like there's no, you have to not only bait it, but you want them to spend resources, because otherwise, you get rid of a creeper and it's like, okay. But Jessa is interesting because she wants things to die, and just ignoring round 1, which is always potentially tough because of battlefield size, but being able to just slowly ping away every time a creeper dies, and then eventually you do run into those fears and you're able to discard the engine and force them to restart, which is really cool. And I was also thinking about like Herald, like the whole idea of stalking, right? Because that's one of the main problems is you're going to ping something potentially, and then you need a way of guaranteeing removal. Being able to ensure that you have stock and enough damage on cheap guys to overpower the 4 life potentially, or the 3 life on a creeper, is really interesting, especially with like something like Old Salt, where you're also getting a big enough body that can't then be pinged away on their turn, or Void Pulsed maybe. I think there's room there, and Consume Soul resetting that ability and giving you the health to keep you in the game. I think there's potentially some play with just like a real heavy stock deck, and ping and using Hunter's Mark with various sources of side and main action ping to keep the seedling specifically out of play.
Yeah, so I mean, these are some decent counters, I think, that we've come up with here. I mean, there's a lot of play and a lot of different archetypes against this, and I think a lot of the things that we've talked about are legit. I mean, at the end of the day, hope is hope, and they're gonna outvalue you, but at least we have some play in some of these things. I think we have a lot of good
solved
play
it.
here.
We solved
Yeah,
it.
we did. It's over. It's solved. It's done. Hope's not a problem. Brennen's not a problem. I mean, we solved all the Ashes problems in the last 2 episodes.
We solved most of Ash's problems, but what we're not going to have time to solve this week is the problem of Vicky. We just don't have time this week. So much like Jimmy Kimmel trying to get Matt Damon on the show, she's waiting in the green room, and she's just not going to get her shot this week. Maybe next week, Vicky.
Maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
But now that my laptop is alive again, the Wheel of Jank is a thing that I can now spin again. So if we ever do get to talk about Vicky, I will respin the wheel and we'll come up with something else. But one day we'll do it. It'll be done one day. But we got bigger fish to fry right now, man.
Yeah, I guess we've solved the 2 problems of the Ashes world. So what I don't know, do we want to put a feeler out to our millions of listeners and see what they want to hear us analyze and solve?
Yeah, I think we should. I think that's a good idea. I mean, there's other top decks out there, but yeah, what do you want to hear us talk about how to beat or how to deal with? I'd like to know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it too. Give us some more fuel, or just in general, if there are any other topics or segments. And also, if you are going to give a list or an archetype, send us the specific link from Ashes that you're looking at, just so we're all on the same page in advance. But yeah, so we'll postpone Vicky once again. We just don't have time, and hopefully by the next recording, we've got juicy new cards in hand, and at the very least, we should have spoilers this week for whatever's remaining. Bone Crow is the one, that and Calamity Golem. Those are the two conjurations that should be very interesting to see. And whatever that squirrel thing is in the rulebook.
Oh, yeah. That thing is weird looking.
Sparkly squirrel thing. Yeah.
We've been remiss in not doing this for now 8 episodes. But if you've gotten to the end of this podcast and it sounded anything like a coherent episode, know that is solely the work of one very important person of this podcast, Mrs. The Treatment, who the treatment, this speaks volumes to the quality of her character and your marriage, that she's willing to do this for us. But she puts in a huge amount of time stitching together the podcast, and this week has been riddled with technical errors. So thank you very much, Mrs. The Treatment, for all the work that you do.
It's absolutely excellent. I know myself in editing it the first couple episodes that it's no easy feat, and she does it like a million times better than I did it. So, yes, thank you very much for making this work and making it into something that our millions and millions of listeners actually want to listen to.
Yeah. I don't think she expected or will expect the amount of difficulties from this episode, but she puts in a ton of work, and it's awesome because this is all just for fun and for whoever's out there listening. Hopefully we're not boring anybody's ear off, but it's just cool to talk about a fantastic game. And, she doesn't really know anything about it, so she's just doing this for us and for fun. So we'll see when this next episode gets out. She's been very nauseous. She's pregnant, so looking at screens has not been easy lately. So we'll see. We might get this out next week. But, to everyone out there, we're going to sign off. If you're not janky, you're stanky. And we'll see you next time.
Later, everyone.
Peace, everyone. Take care.